Before we get into this, I just wanted to give a huge shout out to Hello Studios for everything that they do. If you are wanting to start a podcast and you're located in the Dallas Fort Worth area, Hello Studios is the place to go. I love how helpful they've been, even just creatively, if you are stuck on what kind of podcast to start or how to, if you think you should start a podcast but you don't know, literally reach out to them. They will help you. They will help you plan. They will help you execute just everything that you want to do. I cannot recommend them enough. So thanks for tuning in and let's get started. Okay, guys, let's get right into it. Oh my goodness. Welcome back to another episode of the Pursuing You podcast. This is your host, Isabel Arias. And guys, I'm so excited to be back. I took the month of January off because I just felt like December was just a month where it was just go, 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 go. And then so many things happened in January that I was like, you know what? I need it. I can't pour out of an empty cup. And I will always say that because when there ever comes a time that I feel like I can't serve at church because my life isn't aligning with like what I am living or what I am preaching, I never want to do that because I feel like I have done that years ago. And even a year ago, I feel like I was doing that. Like I would say, oh yeah, you got to do this, or, and it's like you're not living that way. So I'm just really excited to be back, and we are going ham on the guests. And honestly, I've never say that term. Like, I'm so excited for this year, 2025. I hope you guys have had a great start to the month, or just to the year. I mean, I know January can always be a tough month, but I'm so excited because I just feel like God has so much in store for us this year. And if you don't know what that is, please just like sit with him and like ask him, okay, God, what is it that you want, from me this year? What is it that you want to do through me? What are the visions and the dreams? Like, what is it that you have for me? Like, will you lead me in what it is that you have for me? Because I truly do feel like that he will speak to you, whether it's directly to you or to use your community around you. He will speak to you. And so I am so because of 2024 and 2024 ending and December, something that I do every year is I reflect. I sit down and I think about all the things that I did in 2024, the good and the bad, the ugly. What do I want to change about my life? And the title of this episode is literally going to be, what is consuming you? Like, what is consuming you? Because if it's not God, what is it that's consuming you so badly that is leading to anxiety, depression, anger, bitterness, all these different things? What is consuming you? And when I reflected on my life in 2024, I could truly recognize that what was consuming me was my dating life. And, there's nothing wrong with dating. That is not what I want you to hear. I actually loved going on dates. Like, I love a good little first date. I love getting to know someone, just like the early stages. Like, oh my gosh, he makes me feel so giddy. Honestly, it's the best feeling ever. When you meet someone, you're like, oh my gosh, like this is so awesome. And I feel like I let that consume me rather than letting God consume me. And so I feel like if I would have been aligned with my relationship with God, would have been aligned, like I wouldn't have been, looking everywhere that I went, oh wow, like this guy could be cute, like this could be the one, or being on dating apps all the time. Like the amount of time that I spent on dating apps, going on dates, like if I would have spent even just half of that time with the Lord, I truly do think my life and everything would have looked so different. Because it was kind of just like okay, like in the mornings, or okay, like when I'm free sort of thing. Like I was giving God my last 10% instead of my first 10%, which it says we should always give him our first 10%. And I know that that is financially, but also in so many other areas that we can give him like our first 10, like first 10 minutes in the morning, like there's just so many ways that you can do that. And I feel like because I was just so focused on finding the perfect one, and I had just moved to a new city, and, like everything's at an all-time high, and the feelings and the friends, and you're trying to say yes to everything and trying to learn how to find a balance. And I truly do think that it's okay. I think sometimes we stress ourselves out because our relationship with the Lord doesn't look linear. Sometimes it just looks like this like thing of, okay, I have 2 hours for you today. Okay, wait, I didn't have time to talk with God today. Okay, I'm mad at you, Lord. Like, I hate that I'm going through this, like, sort of thing. And so there's so many different things that, like today, if you feel like it's been hard to read your Bible every day and it's just been making you pull away more from God because you think there's something wrong with you, there's not. Like, there is seriously nothing wrong with you. It happens to all of us. We all hit almost like a plateau where we're like, wait, I've been a Christian for so long. Why do I feel like I still don't know what I'm doing? Like, it's okay. I think the enemy really tries to get in our heads and say we have to have it all together. And the reality is, I'm going to say it, no one has it figured out. As someone who works for, an influencer who is 35, and honestly, I really do think God has placed her on my life for a reason, because I am so hard on myself all the time. I'm so hard on myself thinking, okay, I have to have it all figured out by 22. I have to have it all figured out by 25. I have to have it all figured out by 30. Like, if I don't know what I'm going to be doing, and it stresses me out. And in the word, it says, don't be anxious about anything, but in every petition, like, give thanks to the Lord. And I truly do think that sometimes, and guys, we have our Bible today, so we are going to be reading the word, because I am going to be talking about not only like what is consuming you, but what to do in moments of trial, what to do in, the lowest of the valleys, and who to turn to. It's like we can turn to so many things, even in healing. Like when we're trying to heal from a guy that we really liked. Hello, like me. What do we do? What do we turn to? What are we letting our minds consume us with? Are we, listening to podcasts that are like, yeah, F him, like he doesn't deserve you, and probably true, but that probably isn't what we need to hear. Okay, so there's this verse that talks about just like the consumption of God. And I honestly, like, I have said a lot, God is I want the Lord to consume me. I want God to consume me. And trust me, give it 2 weeks. Get off the dating apps for 2 weeks, or whatever it is that is consuming you. Get off of TikTok for 2 weeks and fast. I know that fasting biblically is only with food, but I think there are other things that we can fast, especially when there are things that are consuming us so badly, that are distracting us from being with God. And almost, for example, something that consumes me a lot is my phone. And I know that I am so guilty of being like, okay, God, when I get home, I'm going to read the Bible and I'm going to spend time with you. But then I start going on TikTok, and I start scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. And then I get tired. I'm like, okay, God, I'll do it tomorrow. And then it's one of these things where it's like, girl, put your phone down and spend time with the Lord. Like, he literally longs for that so badly, like desires to spend time with us. And we are here, just being, just rebellious children at times, or just not even that, like almost just not giving him the importance that he deserves, like the honor and like the fear of the Lord, like what, people preach about. Like, that fear of the Lord doesn't mean that you're actually scared of him. It actually means that you honor him so much that you desire. It's like, the way you honor your parents, like you want to make them proud of you. And even though like God is already so proud of us, and there's not anything else that we could do to make him love us anymore or make him more proud of us, like it is just one of those things that it's like, okay, I need to put my phone down and have the discipline too. Like discipline is so big on this, but I'm going to read this verse real quick, then I can talk about it. So it says, for the Lord your God is a consuming fire, a jealous God. So when I think of a jealous God, it's like, okay, if I am idolizing something so badly that God is right here and money is right here, God is literally going to make that, like, going to make you realize, okay, you are idolizing this. This needs to, like, not be up here. Or dating. Like, if God and dating are at the same level of, like, idolization, and I'm idolizing both of these so much, and maybe one I'm idolizing way more. It's like, okay, you are not going to have that until you put me, first. That's the way. I know that if my kid was doing something that was not good for them, I would also probably take it away. Being a loving mother, a loving parent, that's the same way God is with us. I think sometimes we think, why does God have me like this? I've been single for 3 years and I have yet to meet the one. And it's like, okay, like, are we letting him consume us fully, or are we, because you can say, like, you can go to church. I was talking about this with my mom earlier. Like, you can go to church and you can say, oh yeah, like, you can even serve and say, yeah, I love God, whatever. But like, what are your thoughts? What are you thinking about when you leave church? What are you thinking? What thoughts are you letting? I know consuming is like the main word I've been saying, and I don't want it to be like this repetitive thing, but truly, because I truly do think that it's so important to reflect and be like, okay, I am letting my phone consume me so much. I'm going to start, instead of doing 1 hour, 2 hours on social media, I'm going to do 1 hour. Because I also think that living a balanced lifestyle is important, because I don't think that it should be something where, like, you go from 100, like 0 to 100. And same thing with even God's word. I think sometimes, we want to get close to God, and it's like, okay, I'm going to go from not spending any time with God to spending 2 hours a day with the Lord. And like, that's great. I love that passion and all of that. But I think you will quickly become burnt out if if it becomes something that you're doing it because you're told, oh, you have to do it, instead of like out of so much love for him, because I've done this in the past. I've done okay, I'm going to cut all of my, worldly friends out, and I'm only going to have Christian friends, or I'm going to cut all secular music out and only listen to Christian music. It becomes the only thing that you think about when you do it, just because, oh, it says it in the word. You don't do it out of, wait, God loves me so much and he wants me to protect my mind, protect my soul, protect my eyes, just like everything that I am listening to, what I'm watching, the conversations that I'm having, like, am I gossiping? That's why you should do it. It shouldn't be out of this, okay, I'm following this, supposed rule book. And yeah, like, it should just be out of honor and glory and to praise him and to be like, God, like, I want to live a life sanctified and consecrated for you. And I feel like that's like the season that I'm like walking through. I recently started an internship at my church, Shoreline City. I'm going to be so honest. At first, it was one of those things where I was like, okay, God, there's no way. I can't do this. I don't have 20 hours of my week to give you. I already feel like I am tired half the time, and I love to be social with my friends. And there's so many reasons that I was giving him as to why I could not do this internship at my church, because I was like, I have a full-time job. I have so many different things that I'm doing. And I just felt like this was just going to be a consecrated time in my life that I was just going to give him. I just felt like he had been asking me for so long to give him 3 months, and I had been honestly disobedient in it because I kept making excuses, and I was like, there's no way God wants me to do this. There's no way, why would God want me to do this? Like, it's 20 extra hours. Like, I'm going to be basically working like 60-hour weeks and doing all that. And I just remember really just feeling like, okay, I think I want to give him 20 hours a week. Honestly, like it's there's this verse in the Bible. I don't really know where it's from, but it's do everything as if you were doing it for the Lord. Don't know, can't quote it because I don't know where it's from. I'm pretty sure it's like in the Psalms, but I truly do think that it's so true when you look at serving in your church as if you're doing it for the Lord. I truly do think that your perspective about it changes, your attitude changes, everything changes. Like, little tasks that you're asked to do that maybe those tasks weren't pertained to what you had signed up for. But when you're like, you know what? I'm going to do this as if God was the one asking me to do it. Literally your attitude for it changes so much. And I think that's what like he's been shifting in my heart. I know that reflecting and being like, okay, God, like, yeah, like dating was consuming me so much and I am so sorry. And I think, I have just laid dating down at his feet. I'm like, okay, God, you will bring the person that you have for me whenever, and I'm going to trust you. I'm going to trust you because if I go to, if I leave it in my own hands, it's just not going to be pretty. And I don't want to because delayed obedience is still disobedience. And that is something that I've heard before. And it's so true. I think if I would have given God 3 months last year, life would have looked differently. But again, I don't think my heart posture would have been ready for that. So I truly do think that it's one of those things that when you just decide, okay, God, I truly just want to surrender every area of my life to you, he will do so much with what you give him. And the more that you give him, he will keep doing more. And so, I am going to talk about some things that I've been walking through and just moments that I have honestly, and not even like what I'm walking through now, but more so just like things that I have walked through. Like when I remember there was this one time that I felt like, and there's been a lot of moments where you think, okay, God, I have no idea how I'm going to get out of this. Literally only you. Like, I honestly don't know how people do it when they don't have something to cling on to that is bigger than themselves, because like the reason I am here today is literally because I've been able to cling on to a loving father that has been better than any kind of earthly father that, I don't know. I think it's one of those things where in the past, I used to think that if I was serving at church, if I was at church 3 or 4 times a week, not 4 times, probably 2 or 3 times a week, that was like enough for God. It's okay, God, like, I'm showing up, I'm doing the thing, I'm serving with middle school students, I am doing everything that, that you have called me to be. And I remember I was at this retreat and he was talking about how God would rather you not attend church and spend alone time with him than for you to be constantly showing up and putting on this mask that, okay, you're being the perfect Christian, but it's like, are you though? And first of all, perfect Christian, like, that's not even something that we should strive to live up to. Like, we're never going to be the perfect Christian. And same thing with like finding the perfect church. You're never going to find the perfect church because the church is made of people and we are all sinners. But I truly do believe that I felt so convicted because I had been doing the most to show up at church. And, I was like, okay, well, I don't really have to spend, maybe I can spend 15 minutes a week with him and the rest can just be serving and all of that. And it's like, wait, God would rather you spend alone time with him than for us to be putting on this, oh yeah, like life is great, whatever, and then doing life basically alone. Because I think sometimes when you move to a new city and you haven't found the right people to be in community with, it can be so lonely because you can't have the same conversations that you're having with a godly friend than like you having with a worldly friend. And I sometimes hate to call it like that but it's true. Like sometimes when you're getting advice from a friend and it's like a worldly friend and they're like, you should do this and this and this, or, maybe they just don't understand your perspective, or maybe it's about forgiving. Well, you should forgive, but you shouldn't forget, or, well, you should forgive, but, I don't know, like, sometimes it's just not great advice. And I think that's also why this is actually like the next episode. I don't know if this is going to be like a part 2, but just more so like what to look for in a friend, because I think that's like a whole separate episode. I think there have been times in this podcast where we have kind of gone into, okay, community is important, but like what characteristics to truly look for in a friend that I think will be very useful for everyone. So going back to this retreat, sorry, I feel like sometimes when I have a solo episode, my thoughts can go somewhere and then I can forget how to bring it back. But I've been like praying about that. I'm like, God, I need a better memory. Like I need to be able to tie it in at the end, because this happens like a lot with my friendships, in small group, my little high school group, my middle school group. And so anyways, going back to what I was saying about this retreat, it really just did convict my heart. And so I remember hitting a low place when I lived in Florida. And I remember literally just like not knowing what to do. And something that has always been hard for me is to lead with vulnerability, because I have always, I think, tried to put on this front that, everything's great, life is great, no matter what I'm going through. I hate being vulnerable, especially when it's with people that I don't really trust, or, maybe I haven't known them for a long time. Like sometimes it's really hard for me to be vulnerable. I don't know. I think it stems from just like, as a child, like hated being like, maybe it was like, I don't know, it was hard for my parents to like, or I don't even know what I think it honestly stems from this like wanting to be perfect and look perfect and like do all these great things, but like no one knows like what you're actually going through. And so I came to this very low point when I lived in Florida, and I literally did not know how I was going to survive another week. I just became so mentally exhausted. And I remember going up to someone at my church and being like, hey, I need help. Like, please, can you just pray for me? And that had been the first time I had done that in like 2 years, like asking, or maybe a year, but like I'm just not good at asking for help. And this is something that I truly want to work on, because I want to be able to lead with vulnerability, and I want my life to be an open book. And I feel like even now there's things that from my past, I'm like, well, I don't want to share those things. There's no reason for people to know those things. And honestly, I think it's even the enemy sometimes wanting to say, well, your people would look at you differently if they knew that you went through that, or your community would look at you differently if they knew that that's where you came from, or whatever it is. I think that the enemy tries to get in our head of, well, they're going to look at you differently. No one's going to be able to relate. And I've recognized that the moments that I've been the most vulnerable, the moments that I have been, so open and honest with the people that I love most, they're like, whoa, Bella, like, why didn't you say anything before? Like, I want people know how to show up for you better when they know what you've walked through, and they know your heart behind things. And I think that's also why God is just teaching me how to just be more vulnerable. Even this week, I had to call a friend up and be so vulnerable. Her name's Jordan, and I had to just be vulnerable. And she is honestly this big sister that I feel like God has given me, like this angel that the Lord has just placed in my life, because I don't know, it's one of those friends that they're just not going to judge you. There's nothing that you could tell them that they could perceive you differently. And I had to call them this week, and God kept putting her on my heart because, it was one of those things where I just didn't want to tell anyone what I was walking through. I didn't want to tell anyone. I didn't want anyone to know what I was facing or anything. And oh my gosh, I am going to cry just because I'm just so thankful that God, in his, sometimes before I forget what I'm saying, I think sometimes I think that God is too busy. I'm like, no, I don't want to bother God with these problems. Like, God, there's people on the other side of the world that don't have anything to eat and don't have don't even know where they're going to get their next meal from. And I don't want to worry God, but it's like, God is someone who is omnipresent and wants to be there for us. Like, he already knows what we need before we go to him. Like, how tender, how sweet is that? Like, that is the kind of God that we get to serve. So it's Matthew 6:10. I've been reading Matthew this month and love it. Literally the Beatitudes, reading about just the most important Sermon on the Mount. So in Matthew 6:8, okay. So it says, and when you pray, do not keep on babbling like pagans, for they think they will be heard because of their many words. Do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask him. I think this is so sweet because it's so true. I think sometimes we think that, okay, well, I don't have to ask God for it because he already knows what we want. And it's like, no, God wants to have, a two-sided relationship with us. He wants us to tell him, okay, God, like, these are the desires of my heart. I know you already know what they are, but I'm going to tell you in case you have forgotten. I think when you lead a life, lead with love in everything that you do, but when you lead with vulnerability, I think it's going to open up so many doors to freedom, because I think the enemy loves to fool this generation and allow our minds to think, well, no one else is going through that. You're going to sound really dumb and stupid if you tell people what you're going through, and that is just not the reality. And I pray that if you are someone who is listening to this podcast, and I know I've been rambling a little bit, but I pray that if you're listening to this, I pray that you know that your people, and if they are people who love Jesus, and if they are godly people, that they are not going to look at you differently. And I am preaching to myself right now, because there are things that even my close friends don't know that I've walked through. And, and I think the enemy tries to put so much shame on us, but just know that shame, condemnation does not come from God. Like, the God that we get to serve is not like that at all. And so I think we have to realize that whenever we feel shame or guilt, it does not come from God. I think sin does separate us from God, because I know when I sin, or in moments where I've done things, I'm like, okay, well, this is embarrassing. Like, I don't want to listen to worship music. I don't want to God, I can't even face you right now because of what I've done. And truly don't think that that's how God wants us to live our lives. And that's why even living in habitual sin, we should not be living our lives that way, because it's one of those things that, God, even for just, honestly, even just for me, when I have lived a double life, or when I have lived a life that I'm saying, oh, well, God, I love you, but I'm going to go do this. And I truly do think that it was something where I just did not know. I just did not understand. I just was confused. I was like, well, the Bible is just ancient, waiting till marriage is ancient. And because I just didn't grow up in an environment where living a Christian life was the cool thing to do. And so I think it was one of those things where you, like, this is literally a love letter. And I think until you see it as a love letter, you're going to see it as a rule of books, and you're going to see it as this book of, oh my gosh, where I have to follow all these things. And it's not even about that. You know, because look at the Pharisees. Look at the Pharisees in the Bible that literally were the most religious people. And God still said, turn from me. Like, I never knew you. Depart from me. Like, people who were building ministries in the Bible, and Jesus literally says, depart from me, for I never knew you. I'm sorry. What? Like, these people that were doing that, like, have the fact that God literally said, depart from me because I never knew you. Whoa, like, that like hits me in the face, because it's like, okay, it's not about being this perfect Christian, about following rules and following all the things, and oh my gosh, well, now I have to do this and this and this. It's not about that. And God cares more about us than what we can do for him. And I think that's something that, if there's one thing that you're going to take away from this podcast, I hope it's that God cares about you so much more than what you can do for him. Like, if you feel like you're in the season of just striving and doing more for him and doing more, it's like, wait, heart check. Why am I doing these things? Am I doing it because I feel like I need to do them in order for God to love me? Because no, you don't have to do anything else in order for God to love us. Christianity is the only religion where you don't have to do anything, because Jesus already paid the price on the cross. And I'm just so thankful that we get to live a life that is that. I mean, obviously, there are going to be times where God calls us to step into more, because it's come as you are, but don't stay as you are. Because I think at times when I first came to really know Jesus, I was like, okay, cool, like, I can do this, but I don't want to give up what I'm doing on the weekends. I don't want to give up, guys. I don't want to give up partying. I don't want to give up, sexual things. Like, but then God's like, actually, the more that you walk with him, the more that you want to be like him. And the sin that has been over your life starts to just fall off so naturally. You're like, wait, like, even this year, guys, even this year, I almost said y'all. I'm like, I feel like I've only been in Texas for a year. I can't say y'all yet, but I'm going to just have to say it. Even this year, so far, January 2025, I have had no desire to go out. Like, no desire. And I truly do think that it's from just so much prayer of, like, God, change the desires of my heart, change the desires of my heart. Like, God, if you no longer want me to do something, please. And that doesn't mean that you're never going to catch me, going to a fun bar with, like, my friends occasionally, but that just means that I just don't desire to do that as much as I used to. Like, this weekend, tonight, I'm doing dinner with two of my friends, and sweet, like, I'm gonna have the best time, and then tomorrow night I'm gonna be grabbing dinner, like, literally home cooked meals. And, like, I'm just so thankful for the community that I have, and also just be praying. Like, if you feel like you're walking through a lonely season, I think it truly is a season where God is using that to sharpen you, to refine you. Refinement, I've been saying a lot this past month. Refinement happens with fire. You think about how a diamond is made, with fire. Like, hello, and so what does that mean for us? Okay, sometimes us losing our so-called bestest friends is going to get us closer to God, because, oh my gosh, wait, I've reached the lowest point of my life. I have nothing else. I literally only have you, Lord. And then that's when you realize, when you're at the bottom, you realize who's the rock. When you've hit rock bottom, you realize, oh, God is my rock. Okay, gonna start, and I feel like that has happened to me so many times. And now I can literally attest that it is the best thing when you get to be like, you know what? I don't have anything to do this Friday night. I'm going to spend some time with you, God. And in those moments in the past, couple years where I've been able to do that, and don't get me wrong, when I moved to Dallas, I think there were things where I was like, okay, wait, yeah, love this. And then I was like, wait, I'm falling into like my old patterns. And so just also being very discerning of like who you're allowing into your life, who you're allowing to speak into your life, because I think that is so important too. So something that my mentor says so much and that I truly live by and have lived by ever since 2021, since she told me that you should have three kinds of people in your life: people that pour into you, people that you pour into, and people that you mutually pour into each other. And be able to identify, okay, wait, with this friendship, am I going to let her speak into my life, seeing the way that she lives? You know, it's like one of those things where people tell you only take advice from people that you want to have a life like. Does that make sense? Or um yeah, like only take advice from people. Like, why would you go and take advice from a person, dating advice from a person who has never been in a relationship before? Probably don't want to do that. Or someone who you're not striving to be like, one word that I'm trying to say less is the word like. So then I'm like, ugh, don't want to say that, but that is what I'm trying to say. And it's also really early in the morning, so I think my brain is still turning on. I probably should have had coffee before this, but it's okay. I think we're doing great. And I hope you're still listening. And I'm so thankful if you're here. I just want you to know that my heart for this podcast is for you to pursue God wholeheartedly, and that you would pursue your best self before you pursue other things. And I truly do think that when you put God in the middle and you put God at the throne of your life, when this is aligned, everything else in your life will be aligned. And that's something that we've been learning in our internship too. And so it's just been so sweet to see that. And I'm just so thankful that you're here. But I'm going to hit on one last topic before we close out. And it's just that I feel like I need to speak to someone right now who is going through hardships and feels like they are at the end and they don't know what their life is going to look like a month from now. And trust me when I tell you that I just know that God sees you and he loves you and he loves you so much. And I know that right now it might feel like God does not see you, or you might feel like, God has forgotten about you. But I promise you, and if you're watching on YouTube, like, promise you that God has not left you, God has not forsaken you, that God will never leave you, that even if you don't understand why you are walking through what you're walking through, that does not mean that he has left you or that he has forsaken you. I promise you, I have walked through so many moments in my life that I could like tear up, that I have literally thought that God had left me, that God had forgotten about me, that I just wasn't good enough to be a part of, because of all my past mistakes and all my sin and everything that I had done. I had gotten to a point where I was like, you know what? There's no way. That's it. But God showed up again. But God. And it's like that verse. I'm going to cry. Oh my gosh. In Daniel, where they're about to be thrown into the fire. I'm just going to read this because I think that this will encourage someone on the other side of this who is feeling like God has left you, or that God doesn't see your circumstance, or you just don't understand why you're going through what you're going through. And that's so real. I'll be vulnerable real quick. Like, my mom has been pretty sick the past couple years, and there's just been different, like, there's not even something specifically that she's been sick with. Like, I can't even say, oh, she has this. But lately she's been having really bad insomnia, and to the point where, like, I've gone home a couple times and I'm like, don't know if this is going to be the last time that I see my mother. And this is just me being so vulnerable. Again, I want to practice what I preach. And so with that, I think it's not something that I open up and tell everyone about. I think it's one of those things where it's like, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. When people ask, I'm doing great. But it's like, wait, we need to ask for help, because your community is going to know how to help you and be there for you when you're able to be vulnerable. And luckily, my mom has gotten better, and I've been praying so much for her. But it's one of those things where it's like, my mom never got tired of praying for me. When I was lost in my rebellious years, my mom never got tired of praying for me. So never get tired of praying for your circumstance, because you just don't know what God will do when you are prayerful, when you're on your knees, when you are fasting, when there is something that you're believing for. Don't get tired of it. But real quick, I'm going to read the story. So basically, I'm just going to explain like the little, in short term, King Nebuchadnezzar wanted them to worship, this statue of gold, and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were like, no, we're not going to do that. And so he was furious, because he was like, okay, well, if you're not going to do that, then I'm going to kill you. And basically they were like, but if you do not worship it, you will be thrown immediately into a blazing furnace. Then what God will be able to rescue you from my hand? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to him, King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hands. But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold that you have set up. And I think it's one of those things that when you're praying and you're believing for something so much, to know that even if God, for some reason, even if he doesn't answer a certain prayer, even if, that person that you've been praying for that has a disease, something happens, even if he doesn't fulfill the prayer that you have asked, he is still good and he is still God. And I think that is a posture that we should have, is that, but even if my God, believing so much that he is, but even if he doesn't, to know that he's still good. And he is still a God worthy of honoring and giving praise to. And so, if there's something, I feel like I needed to say that. And I hope that this podcast helped you. I hope that it encouraged you. I'm sorry if, actually not going to say I'm sorry. I wish I could have had more time to say more. I do want to make a part 2 of just the importance of having people that are going to be there for you, and how important it is to just have godly community around you. So stay tuned for that. But thank you so much for tuning in. Follow us on our Pursuing You Instagram. I am going to start posting on there this year so much more. So follow us on there. That is going to be happening this month, which I'm so excited about. Already have a little graphic of what it all is going to look like, a feed of what I want it to look like, and all of that, and reels and all the things. And follow me on my personal page if you would like to see more of my day-to-day. I really want to start incorporating vlogs. I've been talking with my creative team about, okay, what do we think, what would be best? Should I put vlogs in my podcast, or should I just do my personal vlogs and put them on YouTube? So still deciding what to do about that. But Isabella Arias, 3 L's, and then Arias. Everything will be linked below if you want to follow me. Subscribe, leave a review. It is so, so helpful. And yeah. Thank you so much for tuning in. All right, bye.